Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We are holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Vav. Meretz Hashem will be learning today Daf Lamed Ches Amud Aleph and a good piece of Lamed Ches Amud Beis. We're behind one day in the Dirshu schedule, so hopefully this will get us well on the way of catching up. So we have concluded hilchos Tisha B'Av, and like I keep on saying, may these halachas not be negaya anymore. The Rosh Hashanah should bring the Bias Gal Tzedek B'Meher V'Yameinu, and we shouldn't have to apply these halachas anymore. The day of Tisha B'Av should become a Yom Tov, like the pasuk says, Kara Alai Mayed. We've always said that Tisha B'Av has a certain aspect of Yom Tov to it, and one of the reasons for that is because eventually, it should be B'Meher V'Yameinu, the day of Tisha B'Av indeed will become a Yom Tov. Nepach l'sasayin u'lesimcha. Okay, now we move on to hilchos taanis, the halachas that apply to taanis in general. And we begin Siman Tavkuf Samach Beis Hilchas Kabbalah Din Kabbalah Satainas, the halachas that apply to being Makabal Atainas Uba Yud Gimel Seifim, and here we have 13 Seifim. Says the Mechaber in Sif Aleph, Kol Tainis Shaloi Shaka Olav Chama, any Tainis where you don't meet the Shkia, where you're not fasting through Shkia, through sunset. And the Mechaber explains further, any taanis where you don't continue fasting until Tseis HaKechavim at Motzei Taanis, so you fast beyond the Shkia. When the Shkia comes, you're still fasting. That's what the Mechaber means when he says, Kol taanis shaloi shaka olav chama. Any taanis where you're not fasting when you arrive by Shkia, and then he explains Dahainu Shalai Yishlimu Atzeis HaKechavim, meaning that you neglected to keep on fasting until Tzeis HaKechavim. And I'm going to skip the words of the Ramah for a moment, just for continuity's sake. Says the Mechaber, Einoi Taanis. That is not a valid Taanis. And like the Mishnah Berurah is going to tell us, what that means is you are not Mekayim your Chiyuv to fast. So if you had a Chiyuv to fast, a normal Taanis, a regular Taanis, you were not Mekayim the Chiyuv because you didn't fast all the way till Tzeis HaKechavim. And we're going to see that this halacha applies to reciting Haneinu in Shemona Esrei as well. It's not considered a bona fide taanis, and you would not recite Haneinu in Shemona Esrei. Now let's just go back to the words of the Ramah, where the Ramah defines the meaning of Tzeis HaKechavim. Says the Ramah, Dahainu sheyero shloisha kechavim beinanim. Tzeis HaKechavim is the time at which we can see 3 medium-sized stars. Another way of measuring Tzeis HaKechavim is when the moon is already very strong. The light of the moon is strong and can be seen shining on the earth. Okay, let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah is Katan Aleph. Kol Taanis. Hainu, explains the Chavetz Chaim. What does the Mechaber mean when he says Kol Taanis, all Taanesim? Hainu bein ha'arba tzomos. This is true of the 4 main Taanesim d'Rabbanan, which are Asar B'Tevis, Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, Tisha B'Av, and Tzom Gedalia. Oy eza Taanis Yachid. Or it could also be referring to a Taanis Yachid, the Taanis of an individual person who is Makabal a Taanis. If he's Makabal a Taanis, so then that's a Taanis that he's supposed to keep according to the Takanas Chazal of a Taanis. So the same halachas that would apply to one of the Arba Tzomos would apply to this Taanis Yachid as well. And in that case, you have to fast all the way through to Tzeis HaKechavim. Is Katan Beis, the Ramah said, was Tzeis HaKechavim, the time that you could see Shloisha Kechavim, 3 stars, the Shnayim Adayin Heavy Bein Hashmashos. If you could only see 2 stars, that is still considered the twilight period. That is not yet night. Is Katan Gimel Beinanim, 3 medium-sized stars, Aval Gedolim Loi Mahani. But if you're able to see 3 large stars, that is still Bein Hashmashos. That's not yet Tzeis HaKechavim. Deheim Neren Af Bayoim. You have large stars that could be seen even during the daylight hours. V'hinei b'simen reish tzadik gimel sif beis l'inyan motzai Shabbos. When we were discussing hilchos Shabbos and we were discussing the time of motzai Shabbos, the end of Shabbos, Pasak al Shulchan Aruch, the Shulchan Aruch paskin de'ein lasais malacha, that you're not allowed to perform forbidden malacha ad sheyero shloisha kechavim kitanim uritzufim, until the time that you could see the light of 3 small stars, and 3 small stars that are close together, not stars that are spread out from one end of the sky to the other. V'hu mishum chomer de Shabbos. The Chafetz Chaim tells us that the reason with the Mechaber says that back in hilchos Shabbos is because of the great severity of Shabbos. V'hu adin le'inyan Motzei Yom Kippurim, and the same halacha would hold true for when you're allowed to eat on Motzei Yom Kippur. Avo be'inyanenu, but in the context at hand, where we're discussing taanis, which are all dinei d'Rabbanan, sagi bebeinanim va'afilu mifuzarim, then it's enough to see 3 medium-sized stars, and even if they're spread out throughout the sky. Okay, the Mechaber said that kol taanis shelo yishaka olav chama, any taanis where you're not still fasting at Shkia, and you fast and you don't fast all the way through to Tzeis HaKechavim, einoi taanis. Explains the Chafetz Chaim, what does that mean, that it's not a valid fast? Hein le'inyan shelo yotza b'zeh yedei chiyuv ta'anisai. On the one hand, he's not mekayim his chiyuv to fast. V'hein le'inyan she'eina mispal anenu, and also you would not recite anenu in Shemona Esrei on a fast where you did not fast throughout the day all the way through to Tzeis HaKechavim. Continues the Mechaber by the Ois Hey for the Mishnah Berurah, 3 lines down, the middle of the line. V'im daitai lechol kaidem lochein. If a person's mindset was that he's going to be eating on this fast day before Tzeis HaKechavim, what does that mean? Well, says the Chafetz Chaim in Ois Katan Hey, v'im daitai lechol kigoyin shehisna b'shas kabbalasai shaloi lahashlam taanis. Let's say somebody was makabel a taanis yachid. Somebody accepted upon himself his own personal fast. But when he accepted upon himself that fast, and when I say that he accepted upon himself a fast, I'm not necessarily saying right now that he was makabel the taanis by mincha the day before the fast. He made up in his mind that he's going to fast for half a day tomorrow. Tomorrow, for whatever reason, let's say it's a taanis is for personal reasons. Maybe somebody feels that he did a chet and he wants to have a taanis to be ma'ur him to tshuva. So he makes up in his mind that he's going to have a half-day taanis tomorrow. He's going to fast until chatzos. In that case, that means that he made up in his mind that he's not going to be fasting all the way through to Tzeis HaKechavim. Says the Chafetz Chaim here in Ois Katan Hey, kigoyin shehisda b'shas kabbalasai shaloi lahashlam taanis. When he accepted this fast upon himself, he was not accepting upon himself a full-fledged fast. He accepted upon himself a chatzi yom taanis. In that case, says the Mechaber, let's go back into the Shulchan Aruch, 3 lines down the middle of the line, if somebody only accepted upon himself a half-day taanis, so he never had das that he was going to fast all the way through to Tzeis HaKechavim, einoi mispalel anenu. The Mechaber says that on that kind of fast day, you would not recite anenu in Shemona Esrei. So again, let's say somebody accepted upon himself a chatzi yom taanis. So he fasted until chatzos. A half hour after chatzos is mincha gedola. He still didn't eat, and now he's going to daven mincha. One might have thought that he could say anenu. And the Mechaber paskins, no, you should not say anenu, because since it's not a full day fast, it would be inappropriate to say the tefillah of anenu. That's the opinion of the Mechaber. Now let's take a look at the Ramah. Says the Ramah, Haga, Miu. However, even though this is the opinion of the Mechaber, Noyagin, the minig is lehispalel anenu, to recite anenu, afal pi she'ein mashlimin ad tzeis hakechavim. Even though in the scenario that we just discussed, you're not going to be fasting all the way to tzeis hakechavim. This person fully intends on breaking his fast after he davens mincha. Yet the Ramah says the minig is that this person should say anenu, v'chein das miktsas rabavasa, and the Ramah says that indeed is the minig of some paiskim. Miktsas rabavasa. He brings this down from the Trumas Hadeshen. Now let's stop here for a moment. Now let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Vav. So again, the Mechaber said, if somebody decides that he's going to have a half-day taanis, and now he's davening mincha by mincha gedola. So let's say it's 12:30, it's mincha gedola, half hour after chatzos, and he's davening mincha. The Mechaber said he should not say anenu, since it's not a full day taanis, it's not a bona fide taanis, and it's inappropriate to say anenu. The Ramah comes along and the Ramah says that the minig seems to be that such a person does recite anenu. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Eis Katan Vav, Afal Pi She'ein Mashlibin. The minig is that this person says anenu even though he's not completing the taanis. Hainu im pirish b'shas Kabbalah shaloi lahashlim. Again, we're talking about a case where this person who's fasting a half day made up in his mind at the time of his Kabbalah that he's not going to be fasting a full fast day. Afilu hisana rak ad mincha gedola mispal anenu. In that case, if he only fasted until mincha gedola, and now he's davening mincha at mincha gedola, so he's still fasting, this person, says the Ramah, there's a minig that he could recite anenu. Avalim kibel taanis stam. But if a person was makabel stam a taanis, if a person was makabel a taanis on himself, and he did not specify that it's going to be a partial day taanis, a person was makabel to fast. He was makabel to fast. That means a regular fast. Avalim kibel taanis stam. If a person stam he was makabel, so to speak, a default taanis, tzarich lahashlim ad seisa kechavim. Such a person has an obligation. He has a chiyuv to fast until seisa kechavim, because a stam taanis, when a person is just makabel taanis, the default position is that means he's going to fast a full day. Kidl kaman b'siv gimel, like we're going to see later on in siv gimel. V'ayin b'bir agra damash b'minei debazeh im lo hishlim afilu l'das mixas rabavasa ein mispal l'manenu. The Bir Agra says that even the mixas rabavasa, even the some paiskim that the Ramah brings down, that the Ramah says justify the minig that when you fast a partial day you could recite anenu, that's only if you were makabel on yourself specifically to only fast a partial day. But if you were makabel on yourself to fast a regular taanis, then the default position is that means a full-fledged taanis of a whole day through to Tzeisa Kechavim. And in that case, even the mixas rabavasa that's brought down by the Ramah would agree that it's inappropriate to say anenu. V'im lo yihishlim va'achal. Now, to this point, we've been very clear. The Mechaber started off, Kol taanis shelo yishaka alav chama, taanis shelo yishlimu ad Tzeisa Kechavim einay taanis. Any fast where you don't fast all the way through Tzeisa Kechavim is not considered a bona fide taanis. So having established that, and since we're discussing all the halachas that are based on that premise, says the Chavetz Chaim, V'lo yishlim va'achal. Let's say somebody was makabel on himself a regular taanis, which we're saying now means the default position is that you're going to fast a full day through to Tzeisa Kechavim. What happens if you were makabel such a fast and then inadvertently you ate in the middle of the day? Now do we say that your fast is not a fast because you ate and you didn't fast all the way through to Tzeisa Kechavim? And if so, what is the law that governs your status now in the middle of the fast day? Can you eat? Can you not eat? You will makabel a regular full day fast, but you ate. So what happens now? So the Mishnah Berurah says, Ayin l'kamon Siman Tavkuf Samaches Sif Aleph u'Bahargosham. He sends us to Siman Tavkuf Samaches Sif Aleph and to the words of the Ramah over there. Well, if you take a look over there on Daf Mem Gimel Amud Aleph, the Mechaber says in Siman Tavkuf Samaches Sif Aleph, Nodar lehis anois yoim zeh. If somebody made a neder, if somebody made a vow that he was going to fast on this specific day, somebody said, tomorrow, Monday, I'm going to fast. V'shachach v'achal. And then he forgets and he eats on that day. The halacha is, says the Mechaber, mashlim taanisai. He has to complete the fast because he made a neder that he was going to fast on that day. So yes, it's true that he accidentally ate. But so what? That doesn't take away his obligation to continue fasting. Mashlim Tanisa, he has to complete his fast. V'hu adin, and the same halacha applies, says the Mechaber, im haya taanis chaloim. Let's say he was fasting because of a taanis chaloim. Oisha haya taanis tzibur. Or let's say it's asar b'tevis, and somebody accidentally ate. You don't say, oh, I broke my fast, now I don't have to fast anymore. No, it's asar b'tevis. On asar b'tevis, you have to fast. so he has to continue fasting. Or it's a day that everybody knows that he fasts, like let's say this person has the minhag to fast on the yard side of a parent or on the yard side of his rebbe. So in all of those scenarios, then the day is what's requiring the fast. If it's a taanis tzibur, if it's asar b'teves, you have to fast because it's asar b'teves. Even if you accidentally ate, you have to pick up the fast and keep on going. If it's the yard site, then you always fast. So it's the day of the yard site that is obligating you to fast. You inadvertently ate, so what? Now you have to stop eating and you have to continue fasting. Avol, however, im nadar lehisanois yoim echad oy shnei yomim. If, on the other hand, somebody didn't accept upon himself to fast on a particular day, he took upon himself, I'm going to fast for 2 days. He didn't specify which days. And then he started to fast, and he inadvertently broke his fast by eating a kizayis of food. In that case, says the Machaber, he lost out on his taanis because he's not fasting, he ate. And now he has to make up the fast on a different day. You see, over here, it's not the day that's requiring the person to fast. Over here, this person took upon himself to fast for any 2 days. Okay, now you're not fasting because you ate. So the fact that you ate, you're not being mekayim your neder. So now, go ahead, eat a full meal, but you have to fast on a different day to be mekayim your neder. Says the Ramah, v'yesh machmirin, there are those that are machmir, and they hold afilu b'nadar lehisanos yom zeh, the chayiv lahashlim, that even in the first case of the Machaber, where it's the day that's obligating you to fast, where a person took upon himself to fast on a specific day, and in that case, the Machaber said, even if you inadvertently ate, you have to continue fasting because you accepted upon yourself to fast on that day. Says the Ramah, yesh machmirin, that even in that case, they're machmir, and they say that you should make up that taanis on a different day. And that's what's meant over here by this Mishnah Berurah when he says v'im loy hishlim va'achal. If somebody did not complete his fast day and he inadvertently ate, ayin likamon siman tavkov samaches sif aleph u'bahagah sham. That's the scenario that he's referring us to. Okay, now we go back to what we were discussing. V'ha desasam Ramah lahakel beferish b'shas kabbalah. This that our Ramah over here is telling us, that if somebody accepted upon himself beferish when he was makabel his taanis, that he's only accepting upon himself a partial day taanis, and in that case the Machaber said you don't say anenu, and the Ramah said that there is a minig and there's miktsas rabavasa that say that you do say anenu. That is, says the Chavetz Chaim, hainu dafka b'mispal tfilas mincha kaidam achilasai. That's only if you're going to daven mincha before you ate. So that's like the scenario that I presented to you. That's like a person who says he's bekal on himself a chatzi yom taanis. So really he's fasting till chatzos, but then he knows he's going to daven mincha at mincha gedola, so he doesn't eat for another half hour. He davens mincha at mincha gedola. In that case, the Ramah says there's a minig and there's a miktsas rabavasa that say that you should recite anenu, because when you're davening, you're still actually fasting. But Aval, however, kisha'achal mitchila, let's say this person ate a minute after chatzos, and now he's going to daven mincha at mincha gedola, then b'chol gavni einu mispal anenu, then certainly you can't say anenu, you look like a shakran. You're going to daven and you're going to say anenu b'yom tzayim tanisenu, you're not fasting, how can you say anenu? Ois katan zayin v'chein das miktsas rabavasa. Now the Chavetz Chaim explains the rationale of these poskim. So again, we have this machlokes, the Machaber and the Ramah. The Machaber says you accepted upon yourself a partial yom taanis, you can't say anenu, because since it's not a bona fide taanis, again, a taanis k'takanas chazal is until tzeisa kechavim. You accepted upon yourself a chatzi yom taanis. Very nice, okay. But you can't say anenu because it's not a bona fide taanis. That's the opinion of the Machaber. The Ramah says there's a meaning that you do say anenu. V'chein miktsas rabavasa. Taimam, says the Chavetz Chaim, their rationale is, the svir lehu they hold, the masha amar Gemara, this that the Gemara says, kol taanis shaloi shaka olav chama, any taanis where you're not still fasting at the arrival of shkia, Einai taanis is not a taanis. V'hainu af le'inyan anenu, and that this applies even in regards to the tefillah of anenu. Hu rakim kibel olav lehisanis yom shalem. These mixas rabavasa hold that that's only true when you are makabel on yourself to fast a regular full day taanis. V'loy hishlim, and then you failed to complete the taanis. De'enai taanis. In that case, it's not a taanis. You didn't do what you were makabel to do. You were makabel to fast a bona fide taanis, and you neglected to. You ate in the middle of the day. In that case, the Gemara says it's not a taanis, and you can't say anenu. Ozeinu mispal anenu. Avalim kibel olav rak ad mincha. But if you were makabel on yourself a partial day taanis, to who, and this is we're going to see, is a very, very important concept that the Chavetz Chaim is introducing us to here. To who litziure ba'alma. That kind of taanis is not the same kind of taanis as a person who's makabel on himself a taanis. When a person is makabel a taanis on himself, that means a default taanis. That's a taanis kitakonas chazal. Then there's another kind of taanis. There's a taanis litziure ba'alma. Sometimes a person is makabel on himself a taanis. Let's say he did a chet, he did an avera. He wants to inspire himself to tshuva. He wants to arouse in himself an understanding of humility and a need to do tshuva. And maybe he also wants to gain schusim, so he's painting himself, so to speak. L'tziyurei ba'alma, he was makabel on himself a taanis. That kind of taanis does not have to fit into the rubric of takanas chazal, according to these mixas rabavasa. So avalim kibel alav rak an mincha do l'tziyurei ba'alma. Somebody was makabel on himself a miktas hayom taanis etel mincha gedayla, which is only l'tziyurei ba'alma. It's not to be makabel a taanis ketakanas chazal. Have a taanis l'inyan zeh shemispal anenu b'seich tfilasai av she'einenu mashlim. These mixas rabavasa hold that does constitute a taanis in the context of the halacha of saying anenu. It's true, it's not a bona fide taanis ketakanas chazal, but it's enough of a taanis that you're allowed to recite the tefillah of anenu. Now, we're going to pause over here in the middle of this Chavetz Chaim, and we're going to go back now and continue the Ramah. So the Ramah said, V'chein das miktsas rabavasa. Now we pick up the first words of the Ramah, second line from the bottom of the Shulchan Aruch. Now the Ramah is going to be machriya the halacha. Says the Ramah, Venerally, it appears to me, the dafka biyochid, only by an individual, the oimer anenu b'shemei tefillah, an individual, when does he say anenu in his Shemay Esrei? He says anenu in the midst of the bracha of Shemei tefillah. Now let's remember, in Siman Kuf Yud Tes, earlier in Chelek Aleph of Mishnah Berurah, we learn over there that a person is allowed to insert his own personal tefillas within the brachas of Shemay Esrei. In every bracha, you're allowed to insert in the middle of that bracha your own personal tefillah that is of the same topic as the bracha. So if somebody is davening Shemay Esrei and he has a chayla that he wants to be mispal for, he could say Rifa'enu, and he could be mispal for that chayla in the midst of the bracha of Rifa'enu. And in the bracha of Shemay Tefillah, you could put in whatever personal tefillah you want to put in. So a yachid who has a fast, and he's fasting a partial day taanis, he wants to insert the paragraph of Anei Shemay Tefillah. What's the problem? You're allowed to do that anyway. So says the Ramah, Venerally, it appears to me, the dafka b'yachid da'imar anenu b'shamei tefillah, by an individual who wants to insert the paragraph of anenu inside his bracha of Shemei tefillah, the balav hachi yachal ha'isif. He's anyway allowed to be moisef a tefillah inside his bracha of Shemay Esrei. K'b'shen ispar le'el siman kuf yud tesef aleph. So he, says the Ramah, he could go ahead and he could say anenu on his partial yom taanis. Why not? Ava shliach tzibur, but the shliach tzibur, let's say you have a whole kehillah, you have a whole community that went ahead and they were makabel on themselves a partial yom taanis. So now, according to this Ramah, they all want to say anenu in their personal Shemei Tefillah of their personal mincha davening. Now they have a shliach tzibur, and they say, look, we're all saying anenu, in Chazaras Hashat, say anenu. But when does the shliach tzibur say anenu? the Shliach Tzibur inserts a separate bracha between the bracha of Goel Yisrael and the bracha of Reifei Chaylei Amo Yisrael. He inserts another bracha in Shemoneh Esrei with its own chasima, with its own bracha at the end. That the Rama says, Ava Shliach Tzibur lo yomer anenu, elim kein mashlimin. The Shliach Tzibur cannot say anenu in his Chazaras Hashatz unless he's going to be completing the taanis until taanis tzibur, until tzesek echavim. Because for that, the Rama agrees you need a bona fide taanis. V'chein noyagin. And that's the way we are noyag. That's the way the Rama is machriya. Now let's go back into the middle of Mishnah Berurah's Katan Zayin, where we left off. By me, it is 5 lines off of the bottom of the Mishnah Berurah by the word achein, where now the Chavetz Chaim is going to explain the rationale of the Rama's hachra. Says the Chavetz Chaim, achein. However, roiv ha-paiskim chelkim al zeh. Most paiskim disagree with these miktsas rabavasa. Again, the miktsas rabavasa, they said a person was makabel on himself a partial yom taanis. That's enough of a taanis that you're allowed to say anenu. It's true, it's not a bona fide taanis kitaganas chazal, but it's enough of a taanis that you could say anenu. That was the psak of the miktsas rabavasa brought down in the beginning of the Ramah. However, says the Chavetz Chaim here, you know why the Ramah is not machriya like that miktsas rabavasa? Achein roiv ha-paiskim chelkim al zeh. Most paiskim disagree. V'alkein, and therefore, hechriya Ramah, the Ramah's hachra is to lo nismach aleihem, that we should not rely on those miktsas rabavasa, rak le'inyan yachid, only in the context of an individual, the yomrenu b'shemei tefillah, who wants to recite the paragraph of Anenu within his bracha of Shemei Tefillah, v'yachtom kiata Shemei Tefillah's kol pa'amcha Yisrael barachamim baruch atah Hashem Shemei Tefillah. He's not creating a new bracha in Shemoneh Esrei. He's just inserting a tefillah within the bracha of Shemei Tefillah, which you're allowed to do anyway. V'lo yomar baruch atah Hashem ha'oine be'es tzara. But he's not going to be chaisim the bracha of Anenu with its chasima of baruch atah Hashem ha'oine be'es tzara. So again, like the Ramah said, big deal. Why can't he do it? Anyway, a yachid is allowed to insert a personal tefillah within Shemei Tefillah. Vayin b'taz, and the Chavetz Chaim says, take a look at the Taz in Sivkot and Aleph, Shemet Tzaded, that he leans towards saying, Da'afilu bazeh, that even by the Yachid, Yedaleg Tevois Tzoim Ta'anisenu. The Taz says, yes, the Ramah is machriya that the Yachid could say Anenu in Shemei Tefillah. Because, what's the big deal? He's inserting a personal tefillah within the bracha of Shemei Tefillah. And he's not going to be chaisim with ha'ina beis tzara. However, the Taz says, there is another emendation. There's another change that he should make to the paragraph of Anenu. And that is, he should leave out the words B'yoim tzoim ta'anisenu, where we ask the Rabbeinu Shalom to answer our tefillahs on our fast day. The loylechsi kedai v'shkarim kevan de'enoi taanis. The Taz says you shouldn't say that because you look a shtika like a shakran. It's not a bona fide taanis, so you cannot say B'yoim tzoim ta'anisenu. U'b'sefer bigdei yesha paisik, the Sefer bigdei yesha paskins de'enoi tzarach l'daleg, that you do not have to skip the words of B'yoim tzoim ta'anisenu. Kevan shehu mesana ad achar chatzos, since he's fasting at least until after chatzos. Da'oz achilasei hu kizorek even lachemes. After all, we have the Divrei Chazal. The Chazal tell us in the Gemara that somebody who fasts until chatzos, I think it's a Gemara in Brachas, somebody who doesn't eat until chatzos and he eats after chatzos, he's like a zorek even lachemes. It's like he's throwing a stone into an empty wine flask. What does that mean? You have a wine flask and you poured out some wine. Now the fool thinks that he could refill the flask by throwing in a rock. You throw in a rock, it displaces the wine, and now the flask looks like it's full again. No, there's no more wine than there was before. There's wine in a rock. So too, if you don't eat until chatzos and then you eat after chatzos, it's kizorik even lachemes. You're throwing a stone into the flask. The food that you throw into your stomach now is not going to help you, say Chazal. It's not going to be nourishing. And therefore, you're not lying, you don't look like a shakran if you say b'yom tzayim ta'anisenu, if you fasted at least until chatzos. Lo yimechzi keshikra, ayin sham. V'chein mitzadid b'sefer machzah shekel, ayin sham. Ois katan ches, ava shliach tzibur. So the Ramah said, the Yachid could say anenu in Shemei Tefillah. Ava shliach tzibur, says the Chavetz Chaim. Hainu betfilos chazaras ha-shliach ha-tzibur. During chazaras ha-shatz, the moisif bracha miyuchedes al zeh, bein goyel l'roifei, when on a fast day, the chazan adds another bracha of anenu. Between Re'einu v'anyenu and Rifa'enu, he adds in the bracha of anenu, and he's chaysim with Baruch Atah Hashem Oina Beis Tzara, afilu betfilas alachash, gam hu yomer anenu, kaidem ki'ata shemeya. He, the chazan, could say anenu in his personal, in his quiet Shemona Esrei. He could say anenu in Shemei Tefillah, but he cannot add a bracha between Re'einu v'anyenu and Rifa'enu, v'ayin be'bir halacha, and he sends us to the bir halacha, back ad lameches amud aleph, dibur hamaschel av shlech tzibur lo yomer anenu, ayin be'mishnah Berurah v'ayin be'pri megadim, shekasav, demashma de shlech tzibur b'chazaras ha-tefillah, af b'shemei tefillah lo yomer anenu. Very interesting. You might have thought, what are we saying here? We're saying if the Kehillah accepted upon themselves a partial Yom Taanis, so all of the individuals, they could say Anenu in Shemei Tefillah. Why not? The Chazan, he could say Anenu in Shemei Tefillah during his personal Tefillah, because why not? To say Anenu during Chazaras HaShatz, and to be Moisef a bracha between Gal Yisrael and Reifei Chaylei Amo Yisrael, that he can't do, because you're adding in another bracha. That you can't do. But how about the Chazan saying Anenu during Chazaras HaShatz in middle of Shemei Tefillah? Should he do that? Says the Bir Halacha, no. He brings down for the Pri Megadim that no. The Shliach Tzibur should not say Anenu even in Shemei Tefillah by Chazaras HaShatz. I didn't look up the Pri Megadim. I imagine that the reason is because that's not the Matbeah. That's not the Matbeah Shetavu Chachamim. The format of Anenu in Chazaras HaShatz is a separate bracha between Gal Yisrael and Rifa'enu. It's not in Shemei Tefillah. We don't do something that's not the format. But again, I'm saying that on my own. I did not look up this Pri Megadim yet. Okay. Let's continue with Sif Beis, bottom line in the Shulchan Aruch. Yesh Oimrim. There are those that say, and this is brought down from the Torah in the name of the Avi Ezri. Yesh Oimrim. There are those that say, Shemi Sheragel Hisanois Aseris Yimei Tshuva. Those who have the commendable minig to fast during Aseris Yimei Tshuva. Kevan She'ein Regilus Lekablam Batfila. Since those individuals who fast during Aseris Yimei Tshuva do not have the practice of being makabel that taanis by mincha on the day before, ein tzarech lehisanais ad tzeis hakechavim, they're not required to fast until tzeis hakechavim, ela ad sheyetze mibeis hakneses. It's enough for them to fast after, literally the words of the Shulchan Aruch mean, until after they leave shul, after Ma'ariv, but the Chavetz Chaim is going to say what that means is after the zman of Tfilas Ma'ariv. Even if they daven Ma'ariv early, after Plag. They'd only have to fast until the Zman, until the proper time of Tfilas Ma'ariv. But they don't have to fast all the way until Tzeis HaKechavim. And the reason that the Mechaber gives us is because they're not being Mekabel this taanis by Mincha. If they were Mekabel the taanis by Mincha the day before the fast day, that would give it the status of a bona fide taanis. If it's a bona fide taanis, then you have to fast Ketakanas Chazal. Then you have to fast until Tzeis HaKechavim. But since the practice of these individuals is not to be Makabel Taanis by Mincha on the day before, it doesn't rise to the status of a bona fide Taanis Ketakanas Chazal, and they do not have to fast all the way until Tzeis HaKechavim. Let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah. Ois Katan Tes. Shein regilus lekabel betfila. Since it's not the practice to be makabel this taanis by mincha on the day before, so the Chavetz Chaim says, indeed, why not? Why aren't they makabel taanis by mincha the day before? Explains the Chavetz Chaim, shemikubalim va'imdim mikoyach minhagam. They don't have to make a special kabbalah satainis because they already have an established minig that they fast during Aseres Yimei Tshuva. So there's no need for them to be makabel the taanis. V'gam, and furthermore, explains the Chavetz Chaim, HaTorah rak l'tziyurei ba'alma. This is the same language that we had earlier in the Mishnah Berurah in Ais Katan. Was it Vav or was it Zayin? Why am I getting hung up on this? All right, wherever it was. This is the concept that we already had above earlier, and I pointed it out to you in the Mishnah Berurah. Okay, I'm obsessing over this, and I shouldn't, so I'll just go weiter. Again, we see here in the Mishnah Berurah that the Mishnah Berurah says, this taanis, v'gam, ha-taanis hu rak l'tziyurei ba'alma mishum tshuva sheyiskapru avay noisav. Again, we have this concept that the Chavetz Chaim gives us. There's another reason why this taanis of the person who fasts during Aseres Yemei Tshuva is not the same as, so to speak, a regular taanis, a regular bona fide taanis, where we have to fast until Tzeisak Echavim. And that is that the taanesim of Chazal, the regular taanesim that we have, that Chazal wa Mesaken, those are taanesim. We are fasting out of Avelus for something that happened back in history. On Asar B'Tevis, we fast because the city was laid, they laid siege on Yerushalayim, and because the Torah was translated into Greek. On Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, we fast because of the terrible things that happened. The city was breached, the luchos were broken, so the terrible things that happened. The Tisha B'Av, we fast because of the Churban. Tzom Gedalia, we fast because of the death of Gedalia ben Achikam and the terrible gullus, the extension of the gullus that caused, the worsening of the gullus. Those tanesim have to be bona fide tanesim, ketakanas Chazal. But when we have a different type of taanis, when we have a taanis where somebody is makabel a taanis on himself for tshuva purposes, litziyurei ba'alma, it's a different type of taanis. It's a different geder. And therefore, the rules of the bona fide taanis do not necessarily apply. V'gam ha-taanis hu rak l'tziyurei ba'alma mishum tshuva sheyiskapro avay noisav. Ulefi zeh, oisan anehagin l'hisanis la'olam yoyrichan shal slichos ve'erev Rosh Hashanah, those who have the minhag that they always fast on the first day of slichos and on erev Rosh Hashanah, ein tzarich kabbalah v'hashlama, they also are not required to be makabel the taanis the day before, and they also don't have to fast a complete day through to Tzeisak Echavim. Kevin shemikubalim mikayach minhagam. Ois cotton yud, and these tanesim, the Mechaber said you fast at sheyetze mi beis hakneses until you leave shul. Says the Chavetz Chaim, that means until you leave shul when? Arvis, after Ma'ariv. Va'afilu hispalalu min ba'id yom. And that's true even if you daven Ma'ariv early. Dahainu mi plaga mincha ulamayla, meaning you daven Ma'ariv after plag, like many people do on Erev Shabbos during the summer. Dehu yud aleph shoyis pachas revia, which means at 10 hours and 45 minutes into the day, an hour and 15 minutes before Shkia. Utfilas arvis ein ma'akiv lozeh, and you don't have to actually daven Ma'ariv first. Elakevin she'gia hazman hazeh, once this time arrives, it's enough, you can end your taanis. Ubavad, she is pal mincha tchila. However, you do have to daven mincha first. V'ayin memach tzashekel b'simen tovkov peyalav shekasav da'achshav rabim naigim shalei lehisanis ki im adzman mincha gedola. Many people have the minhag only to fast during Aseres Yemei Tshuva or on Erev Rosh Hashanah. They only fast until mincha gedola, u'mispalin tchila mincha, and then they daven mincha. V'chein kasav b'pri megadim. V'al kol panim nira de ba'adam chalosh. If you're talking about a weak person, bevada yachal lisbait lahakel lehisanis rak azman mincha gedola. They certainly could stop fasting already at mincha gedola, or lispal mincha or tfilas anenu. They should daven mincha at mincha gedola, and they should say anenu in shemei tefillah in concert, pursuant to the hachra of the Ramah at the end of Sif Aleph, and like we saw explained in Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Zayin. So they're going to say anenu in mincha by mincha gedola v'lechal, and then after mincha they could eat. Now let's see the Ramah. Says the Ramah, second line down, Hagah v'hayachid mispalel anenu and a yachid who's fasting one of these fasts will say Anenu. V'chein chasan. Why did I underline here? Yeah, I underlined the asterisk for the Bir Halacha here at the beginning of the words of the Ramah. The Hayachid mispal anenu, like I spoke out. The Chavetz Chaim says in the Bir Halacha, Ritzainer Larma Dafki Yachid. An individual will say anenu, but not the Chazan by Chazaras Hashas. Ukehachrasa le'el b'Sif Aleph, like the Ramah was machriya earlier in Sif Aleph. Continues the Ramah by the Ois Katan Yud Aleph in the Mishnah Berurah. V'chein chasan, similarly a chasan who fasts on the day of his chuppah. Why does a chasan fast on the day of his chuppah? We learn out, interestingly enough, from good old Uncle Esav. What does the pasuk say by Esav? It says, "Vayikach Esav es machalas." He took machalas as a wife. Now the problem is that her name wasn't machalas. Her name was Basmas Bas Yishmael. Her name was not machalas. Why does the pasuk call her machalas? Because when a person gets married, he gets mechilas avonos, his averos, he gets kapara for all of his averos. And therefore it's an appropriate day to fast, to be ma'ur yourself to tshuva. Here the Rebbeinu Shalom is coming and he's cleaning your slate. Here you have a tremendous opportunity. Do tshuva and start fresh. Why does a chassid get kaparas avonos on the day of his chuppah? One of the reasons is because now he's taking a partner in his life. Why should she suffer because of your averis? Why should you suffer because of her averis? So you know what? The Rebbeinu Shalom does you both a favor. He cleans your slate. You get kaparas avonos. Okay. Says the Ramah, v'chein chasan yispal anenu kaidem sheikanis l'chuppah. He should daven mincha with anenu and shemei tefillah before he goes to the chuppah, even if the chuppah is going to be before Tzeisak Echavim. V'az yuchal lishtais b'kaishal bracha. And now, under the chuppah, he'll be able to drink from the kaishal bracha because it's a personal fast. He wasn't makabel the taanis by mincha the day before. There's no need for him to do. Everybody knows the minhag that the chassan fasts on the day of his chuppah. And it's a taanis l'tziyurei ba'alma for kaparas avonos, so it's not a taanis kitakonas chazal, so it doesn't have to be a bona fide taanis to fast all the way to Tzeisak Echavim. So if he davens mincha with anenu before the chuppah, he could drink under the chuppah. Vaz yuchal lishtais mikais shal bracha. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Yud Aleph v'chein chasan demesana gamkein rak l'tziyurei b'shum tshuva l'chapra avonosa. Again, this is not a taanis kitakonas chazal. It's a taanis l'tziyurei ba'alma for tshuva. Ve'ein regilus l'kabel b'mincha shalafanav. And the minhag is not to be makabel that taanis by mincha on the day before. Therefore, he doesn't have to be mashlim. He doesn't have to fast until Tzeisak Echavim. Ois Katan Yud Beis vaz yuchal lishtais, and then he could drink under the chuppah. Hainu gamkein av shaloi hista batchila shaloi lahashlim. The caveat to this rule is, unless the chassan was a wise guy and he was makabel his taanis the day before, and he didn't say that I'm only fasting a partial day. Afilu hachi yachal lishtais v'chanal. Oh no, I'm sorry. Quite the opposite, says the Chavetz Chaim. Hainu gamkein av shaloi hista batchila shaloi lahashlim. Even though he wasn't makabel on himself expressly that he wasn't going to be mashlim the taanis, afilu hachi yachal lishtais. Okay, so what the Chavetz Chaim is saying is, by the chassan, he doesn't have to expressly accept upon himself only a partial yom taanis, because that's the default by a chassan b'yom chupasei. The default is that it's going to be a partial day, because again, it's only l'tziyurei ba'alma for tshuva. Umashakaza va'oz, hainu d'lo yishte kaidem mincha, when the Ramah says va'oz, and then yuchal lishtais b'kaishal bracha, he could drink under the chuppah. What he means by va'oz and then, hainu d'lo yishte kaidem mincha, it means he should only drink then under the chuppah. He shouldn't drink before mincha. Why? Does la yuchal omer anenu? Because if he does, he won't be able to say anenu in shemei tefillah because he's not fasting. However, at the end of the day, the Chavetz Chaim says it would be best for the chassan to expressly accept upon himself that the fast that he's fasting on the day of his chuppah is only a partial day fast. Okay, we got a good piece of this page done, so we did some catching up, and we're going to break over here. about halfway down on the page in the words of the Ramah by Avol. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The hilchos of limud HaTorah should be megan against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shalom should send Yeshuas and Refuas and Parnasa to all those in need, and we should be zeicher to see the Bias Gal Tzedek b'meher v'yameinu. Amen. Be well.